My old 1994 Toyota Celica S. It's got a little bitty 1.8 liter engine, same exact engine they used in the Corolla the same year, that puts out a whopping 110 horsepower. Yeah, it's not a race car. And the problem with Celicas is, as they tried to make them more into race cars, then they had problems. Take, for example, the 2002 Celica. That thing had a Yamaha redesigned engine that did put out 180 horsepower at very high RPMs, but they had problems with blowing up. They weren't designed correctly. In my opinion, it was that Yamaha engine that led to the decline and eventual total demise of the Celica. Made them for decades before that, and that was kind of the beginning of the end. So my 94 Celica S. It's got the 1.8 liter Corolla engine. And yeah, it's not going to win any races. A race of time. This thing's got 240,000 miles on it. Still runs like a clock. And sure, it burns a little bit of oil. It burns half a quart every 3,000 miles. I change the oil every 3,000 miles. Heck, I've seen some modern cars that they burn half a quart of oil every 400 miles. And this thing is 26 years old. It has almost 240,000 miles. That's what I call a solid engine. And it's got an uber dependable 4-speed automatic transmission. Yeah, I would have rather had it with a 5-speed standard, but heck, I only paid $350 for the car. So in that case, beggars can't be choosers. And really, it's just perfectly fine with 240,000 miles on it. It's had the filter and fluid changed like 8 or 9 times in its lifetime. Transmission's never been touched other than that. And look at the nice wheels. Well, it's just a facade anyway. These are AutoZone hubcaps, but they look pretty good, you know? I'm not gonna waste my money on tires and rims. And when you put these back on, it actually looks pretty good from afar. Now the engine and transmission is all original. I did put one timing belt and one water pump on the engine, but other than that, it's all original, except for quite a few other parts. But if you want the truth of that, the old parts weren't even worn out. Anybody who knows me knows I check out things all the time. So I have customers sending me things all the time. This thing's got a catalytic converter, all 4 struts, fancy seat covers, new discs and rotors. But I was testing out products that other people made. The car didn't actually need it, but hey, they gave them to me for free, and I was testing them out for all you viewers to see if those companies made decent products or not. So these fancy LED headlights, they're not stock. They look cool. I still got the stock halogens in the trunk. They still work. I'm testing them out for people. As you can see, they still work quite well. I put them in years ago. I'm just using it for testing stuff. This hatchback has a lot of room. Yeah, there's a lot of junk in it, but realize this is a work car. And I use it for hauling stuff all the time. Watch what happens when I take pieces of it out and move things around. This comes right out. Then we can pop the seats up. Look at all the room this thing has. I've hauled all kinds of stuff. Giant screen TVs, wood for fixing an old rotten house. There's a lot of space in this thing. Well, at least there's a lot of space when the seats are put forward. But, truthfully, if you're sitting in the back of this thing, there isn't that much space for big people to ride in the back. It is a compact car after all. And yeah, the seats were out, but look at this. These are custom-made seat covers I got online. They really look good. These are seat covers. These aren't reupholstered. These are actual seat covers. You'll see, they're just seat covers. They snap on. And now people are saying, oh, Scotty, that thing doesn't even run well. Look, every time you turn the key, guess what? It starts right up. It's a Toyota. And look at this, original AC system. Ah, the sucker still blows ice cold. Granted, with all this glass, yeah, you got a lot of sun in there. You got a greenhouse effect. You need a good air conditioner in this car. And here's one of my cool inventions. Since Scotty's cheap, they broke years ago, and you got to buy them in pairs, and they cost a lot of money. So look at this. I just bolted on a little plastic swing arm. That's what holds it up. When it's closing, you see, open it up, locks in place and holds it in. Then when you want to close it, you just pick it up and then get out of the way. Down it goes. It's been that way for over 10 years now. That thing isn't going to break. Those assemblies, you buy the factory ones and you got to buy them in pairs. She said it was over 200 bucks. Why not just invent things? I don't care if this thing's stock or not. You know, I'm never gonna sell it. It's my work car. Now they're fun to drive. The suspension is a big upgrade over what would be on a 94 Corolla. It's no race car. It's a fun car just to tootle around in. I mean, took it out to West Texas one time when the speed limit's 85. It had no problem cruising for 8 hours at 85 miles an hour. And yeah, years ago, I had to change the radiator. They're a plastic aluminum crap like everything else has. But I bought one of these Japanese ones back in the day when I bought it. It was $79. Took like 40 minutes to put in and it's still working 10 years later. That's the advantage of getting something that's basically a Toyota Corolla. There are parts all over the place, aftermarket, because there's still millions of them rolling down the road. You don't have to special order sports car parts and pay a fortune like other cars. Most of the Toyota parts fit this thing. Now sure, this thing's 26 years old, but look at it. It's still got decent style to it. GT that's out front that's going to the junkyard, it had more horsepower, and it's headed to the junkyard. But this little thing is still rolling along with its 1.8 liter Corolla engine. And being front wheel drive, it's good up north in the snow, pulls itself along quite well. It's not like a little rear wheel drive sports car in the snow that's gonna fishtail all over the place. Heck, the previous owner took it to Colorado to go skiing many times. And yeah, the paint's faded a little. The reason I got it for $350 years ago was the fender was crunched. I had to have my body guy put a fender on, and the front bumper, you could see the orange and yellow underneath because the previous owner had it painted at one of those high school shops where you pay for the materials and they paint the car free. I had the whole thing painted one color at one of these discount paint shops, and they didn't do a fantastic job. You can see it's getting all flat now, but at least it's all one color. Making this the first car I ever owned in my life that was all one color. All the other ones were a bunch of different colors because they'd been wrecked before I bought them, and fender wouldn't always match the bumper, wouldn't match the hood because they'd been resprayed. And when you repaint a car, it's almost impossible to get it the same color unless you paint the whole car. The bumper's going to look different than the fender if you don't paint both of them. And unless you're willing to spend thousands having the paint scraped down to the bare metal and totally repainted to look like new, you're going to end up with a flat paint job after a while if you get a cheapy paint job. But it's my work car. I'm going to start with why you shouldn't buy a Lexus. And that's because they cost too much money. I'm cheap. I would have never bought one in the past, but I got this one for my wife years ago. One of my customers got it from his father. They were tired of it, and I gave him $3,000 for the car, even though it only had 60,000 miles on it. Yeah, it was like 12 years old, but I don't care. I know these things can last. So when it was new in 2002, it was a $34,000 car. So basically I paid less than 1/10 of the original price for a vehicle that I've had customers, yes, 300s, that had 400,000 miles on it. With 60,000 miles, 80% of its lifespan left. I would never buy a new one regardless of the cost because I think they're ugly. I like the old style front. Those new ones with those giant scowling mouth plastic front ends, I think that's one of the ugliest designs ever. And sure, a lot of cars are all copying now that big scowling front grille. I think it's ugly. I like the old ones. They're better looking. Face it, you want a big in the front of your car, it just looks stupid. Now the reason I love this Lexus is because, hey, I'm getting older. These things are really comfortable and luxurious. Now this car is 18 years old, but the seats, the leather's still in really good shape. It's amazing. And being a Lexus, things hardly ever break. Now, in the interest of honesty, yes, I put lots of parts on this car, but for a rather odd reason. I use it as a test car to test out brakes, rotors, all kinds of car parts. I tell them, send me stuff for a 2002 ES 300. I'll see if your product's any good. And here's something that I found out that kind of surprised even me. A couple years ago, a company sent me brand new front struts for the suspension. So I put them on this car, and at the time the car was 16 years old with the original struts. And lo and behold, it rode much worse with the brand new struts. Now they weren't original equipment struts, they were aftermarket ones. But it rode so much worse with the new ones that I put the old ones back on. So here we're talking about a car with 16-year-old struts that still rode fine. The new aftermarket ones rode worse than these old ones. They can last that long? That tells me they're building these things right. Check inside the door. Made in Japan. There's just something about serious Japanese car manufacturers, and motorcycle manufacturers for that matter. They take it seriously. They keep building the car quality. You don't see that with cars that are built in lots of other countries. No, it's not a race car. It's got plenty enough horsepower with a V6. You can cruise all day long. When we drove to Big Bend, the speed limit was like 85 miles an hour. We did 90 the whole way on cruise control. Didn't skip a beat. It's got the proven ASIN transmission. I changed the fluid a couple of times. That's it. Still shifts like a dream. And sure, upgraded the headlights so they look cooler, but that's the advantage of a platform like this. A lot of the parts that are newer style will fit on the older ones, especially aftermarket ones. So you can upgrade it if you want. Hey, I'd rather buy $250 worth of headlights than buy a brand new Lexus for what, $45,000, $50,000 these days, and up. But even though it still kind of looks and runs like a new car, the insurance on it is dirt cheap. It's an 18-year-old car. I gotta pay like $500 a year insurance on this thing. Check out the insurance on a new car. If it gets wrecked or stolen and it's a $60,000 car, they gotta put the $60,000 payout. Don't think your insurance is gonna be cheap on that. They got big giant trunks with lots of space. But really the main selling point is luxury, and they can last so long. Many luxury cars, hey, they fall apart. They want you to buy a new one every 4 or 5 years. These things weren't made that way. Take the engine, it's naturally aspirated, doesn't have a supercharger, doesn't have a turbocharger, isn't GDI high pressure injector. Just a plain old V6 fuel injected engine like in a Corolla or in a Toyota pickups. They're known for reliability. They can last a long time. You don't have to do anything to them but change the oil. I'm a fan of the V6 ones. I'm not really a fan of the big V8 ones. Yeah, they're a bit more luxurious, but as they age, those engines are more expensive to work on. They're much harder to work on. Give you an idea, you got a V8 engine. In order to change the starter on the later model ones, you got to pull the intake manifold off. You're going to spend over $1,000 changing the starter. I changed the starter out in this thing. I think it took me 15 minutes. Yeah, starters are going to wear out in any car, but guess what? I went to AutoZone and bought the starter. It's been in there for 6 years, works perfectly fine. The advantage of this is a lot of it is just Toyota Camry parts. A lot of them are totally interchangeable, and there's a big aftermarket for them. So you can do what you want without having to spend a fortune at the Lexus dealer on their outrageously overpriced parts. And look, even when they're dirty, I haven't washed this thing in 2 weeks, they still look good. Of course, a lot of that depends on the color that you get in a car. If you get a color like this, it doesn't show dirt all that bad, so you don't have to wash it as much. These are 18 years old and they still look great. That's just what I call quality. Now, I know some people are saying, oh, Scotty, how much did Lexus pay you to see how great their cars are? Well, I don't think they paid me anything, considering that I said I would never buy a brand new one, because I think those grills are as ugly as can be. I'm telling you a real life experience from myself and my many customers that have owned these things. And I'd never shell out for a new one. Heck, that kind of money, I'd rather send my grandkids to college than waste it on a car. But if you want luxury in a car that is going to last a really long time and hardly ever break down, and not be all that expensive to maintain either. I mean, you don't go to the dealer, just find a regular mechanic like me that works on it to take care of the thing. Stay away from hybrid Lexuses. My customers with hybrid Lexuses, they loved them when they were new, but then when they got 10 years or older and started to break down, man, the parts cost a fortune for them, because there's really no aftermarket for that hybrid stuff. You're talking dealer then. But if you're looking for a nice, reliable, long-lasting luxury car, hey, get yourself a Lexus that's got a V6 engine in it. Why the Toyota Matrix was such a great car. Now, I have to say was, because they stopped making them. Well, at least theoretically. They originally made Cambridge, Ontario. Canadians make very good cars. They ended up being the only place for a while in the world where they made Lexuses, except in Japan. That's how much the Japanese trusted the Canadians. They let them build their flagship Lexuses in Cambridge. They stopped making the Matrixes, only look at what's out there now. Corolla Hatchback is just a modern version of that. Just look under the hood of this 2007 Toyota Matrix. It's got a Toyota Corolla 1.8 engine, a Toyota Corolla automatic transmission, Toyota Corolla disc brakes in the front, and Toyota Corolla drum brakes in the back. So basically back in 2007, they could have called this the Toyota Corolla hatchback, but they decided to call it the Matrix for some reason. As I said, what's in a name? Back in the day when they started making them, they called it a sport wagon. It wasn't as long as a regular wagon, but it was more set up for sport. It may not look it, but these things, not only are they quick, but they handle really well. When my wife drove this all the time to work before she got her Lexus, she said, I'm always driving really fast this thing. It just wants you to go fast. And as far as I'm concerned, this sport wagon was the best design one ever made. It's got tons of room inside. You take off the cover, and believe me, you want the cover, so people can't see inside your trunk and then break your window to steal what's inside it. This didn't come with one. The previous owner had lost it, so I had to buy this online. But it's worth having. Then you pop the seats back and you got tons of cargo room. Now they don't go all the way back here because I got the front seats back. If you move the front seats up, they go the whole way flat down. Brought all kinds of big screen TVs home, lumber, you name it. You can haul a lot of stuff with one of these things. And it's got tons of hidden compartments. Look at this. All kinds of room for putting tools and stuff, so you can have all your junk down there. When you move those seats forward and have it all flat, there's actually plenty of room for sleeping. And as I said, they're very zippy cars. They're fun to drive. This 4-cylinder engine, a modified version of it, is in the Baby Lotus, the English sports car. They soup them up to put out more horsepower, but it's the same basic engine they start with. And dependability is the key. I've seen these things, 400,000 miles, original engine, original transmission, and they're still running good. Now, a lot of them did have a couple of recalls. That stupid Takata airbag system, this particular one is still under recall. They keep sending us letters. I'm not letting those guys at Toyota touch my car. And some of the early ones had a recall for the ECM, the main computer. I had one customer who had to get it replaced free, but it didn't cost anything. We called the Toyota dealer. They came and picked it up for free, put a computer in, and away you went, and that was 11 years ago, and it's still running strong. Now, truth be told, they can be a tad ugly. These cool lenses, I bought from some Chinese company on eBay for 65 bucks a piece. They just bolt off and bolt on. You can easily do something like that yourself. Same thing with the back. The original ones are pretty ugly. So I got these things for like 55 bucks a piece. There's many advantages of being pretty much a Toyota Corolla with a lot of interchangeable parts. There's all kinds of aftermarket parts that you can get really good prices on that work perfectly fine. Now, being a Matrix and not a Toyota Corolla exactly, it does have a sportier suspension. You can see the big rear spring-assisted shock in the back. The suspension on these are beefier than the Corollas. They do have a relatively rough ride. You want a sport wagon, as far as I'm concerned, this is the one to buy. Heck, my old 94 Celica with 240,000 miles. It's the same basic 4-speed transmission on it. It's got 240,000 miles. Still shifts like a dream. But if you want more zippiness, hey, get a Matrix. It's got a standard transmission. They are insanely fast then. And if you really want some speed, get a standard transmission one and put a turbocharged kit. They make bolt-on turbocharged kits for these things. Now, the new version, Toyota Corolla hatchback, which is basically just a modern Matrix, it's only available with a non-turbocharged engine. Toyota decided they wanted reliability, engines that didn't burn oil. They didn't want to get in that same fix that Honda did with their CR-Vs, an oil dilution problem because of the turbocharged GDI engine. They want reliability above all. And when you go inside, it's a pretty well-designed cockpit, nice steering wheel, and they have really comfortable seats with good lumbar support for your lower back. You can drive these things hours and hours with no fatigue. Now, I do have to say that the radio was a piece of crap that it came with. I put in one of these Android systems, and hey, it works fantastic. It just fit right in the hole. So now you know why I think the Toyota Matrix was one of the best vehicles ever made. For solid, reliable, fun transportation that you can carry a lot of stuff around with too. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.